Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello and welcome to Game Over Winnipeg. I'm here with Charlie Arsenault to talk about the Jets' 4-2 victory over the Ottawa Senators. My name is Brendan Labarre, and you may recognize me if you are a Game Over Ottawa viewer. I did one of your games earlier against the Calgary Flames. Charlie, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good. I don't know. I think I've matured to the point where I don't let the Sens results completely alter my mood. So I'm like, I'm fighting right now, but I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I feel like when you get those when you have those teams that sometimes disappoint you year after year, you can kind of become like numb to the fact, and you really need a nice like they gotta do something special. They gotta give you something to see to make it
Yeah,
affect your everyday mood. I for sure
for
feel that.
sure.
Yeah. Just kind of getting into this. Remember, here on Game Over Winnipeg, it is your show as much it is our show. We have the chat going. It's on the screen. It's right in front of me. You can't see the Jets logo on my shirt. So if you have something to say, something to add to our conversation, just do it. Just do it. Come and join us here. Be a part of our conversation. So just to kind of kick things off, before we get into it, let's go into one of our sponsors today, Hyperdrive Hockey. So shift into Hyperdrive and get ready to have some fun with your new source for all the biggest stories in hockey, bringing a unique style of broadcasting and commentary with a Quebecois flavor. See, French Canadian, Brendan Labarre. See what I did there? That was really good, as I say so myself. Hyperdrive Hockey combines top tier hockey analysis, big stories, pop culture, and a damn fun, can you say damn fun and keep this G? Damn fun atmosphere that will drive debate, make you think, and more. Join Max Van Daphne Meldo, I don't think I've said these out loud before, and Kevin Larmamy every Tuesday and Wednesday for your fill-in on the hockey world. Watch on YouTube on the Game Over Network channel, or subscribe on to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon. Head to our website at thegameovernetwork.com for more. And so with that, with the Ottawa Senators and Jets game today, it was Matt Sogaard's second game of the season. He didn't even play a first one the full time. Played about 34 minutes and 29 seconds with a 7.65. Improved that a little bit and got an 8.26 save percentage today in his loss against the Winnipeg Jets. How did you think he played today?
I'm trying to find the nicest way to say this. Um, I will. I'm going to preface it. I'm going to dodge the question for just a second and preface this with the fact that coming into this game, I think for me, along with a majority of Sens fans, we kind of looked at this as a scheduled loss, more or less. Being an away game against the top team in the league with your fourth string goalie. That said, like I am fine pinning, I would say the second goal, the tying goal on him. Jensen got caught playing a little too high there, but that's a weak backhand that he should have. The rest of it, though, I'm not really ready to put on him. The numbers aren't pretty by any means for Sogard tonight, but no, I don't think I put this loss on him.
No, and I think with like what you said on the first goal, it was the oh my gosh, I'm losing all these. I know, yeah, the Mark Scheifele one was just that backhander. It's a pretty soft one, in my regard. The Kyle Connor goal from behind the net, those are tough to stop. The Gabriel Velarde on the goal line,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do there? And then the Nikolai Ehlers point blank shot. That's just an elite talent in the NHL coming down when they really just backed off him. They let him walk right into the slot.
Yeah, completely uncontested. That's on the rest of the everyone else on the ice in the Sens jersey, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And like especially with the just the story that has been the Ottawa Senators and their goaltending last few years. Like you had Korpisalo coming in, you traded him away in the Ullmark deal, and then kind of getting Ullmark in. He had a little bit of a rough start. I know that because I own him in a fantasy league, and then he kind of really smoothed the ship. And I was really surprised to see him today. I thought we would for sure get him, and I think Forsberg is injured at this moment in time, but just getting him off the start kind of kind of threw me for a loop. And like, so with that, I'm not sure on the injury status of the other goalies, but who do you think you're getting tomorrow in Minnesota?
It's going to be Maryland, I think, because
Yeah.
both Olmark and Forsberg are out right now. Yeah, I mean, 2 games in 2 days. It's going to be, I imagine they'd be going from Sogard tonight to Maryland and tomorrow, who I think is the consensus number 3. So there's a slight upgrade there for the Sens in net. But yeah, at this point, I'm kind of, I don't know. I think I'm over the I don't know what I want to call it, the Sogard experiment. I just don't think he's an NHL goalie, which is an issue because he's on a one-way deal next year.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. But the Sens desperately at this point, especially with the top 2 goalies being injured. But I think even when Forsberg is back, I think they still need a backup. I don't love Forsberg so far this season, or I guess for the last few seasons anyway. But goaltending, even with Allmark playing out of his mind, you still need somebody else. So it's not as much of a nightmare as the last few seasons for sure. But it's the Sens need to fix, need to address the backup. I think there's still some issues in net with this team, even with Allmark putting on an absolutely ridiculous stretch there before getting hurt.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a problem we don't really have in Winnipeg. It's just kind of you just throw out Connor Hellebuck and he just does the thing from someone who doesn't see him every day. And I think here in Winnipeg, we don't recognize the greatness that's in front of us as much as we should have because it's not a flashy goaltender. He doesn't make all these big saves. How did you think Hellebuck played tonight on the other side of the ice?
I hate playing Winnipeg. I hate having to watch the Sens play Winnipeg, mostly because of Connor Hellebuck. Obviously there are like a ton of talented players on the Jets, but Hellebuck specifically is just a nightmare to watch every game. And I don't know, just it mostly comes from a place of jealousy, I think, specifically, understanding the Sens struggles the last several seasons with goaltending, whenever I don't even know how to it felt like I think the best way to describe Hellebuck from an outsider's point of view is the fact that the Sens put 2 goals in almost surprised me. Despite, it being over 30 shots total, I was still a little surprised by that. With as good of a team as Ottawa has offensively, I was still surprised. That's just how good Hellebuck has been. It feels like forever now.
Yeah, kind of ever since he stepped in that league. And I've always liked guys who, from the moment they're kind of drafted and they kind of develop this a reputation for themselves. Like when they were deciding between Nathan MacKinnon and Seth Jones back in the 2013 draft, it's like, okay, well, Nathan MacKinnon's always been Nathan MacKinnon and Hellebuck's just always this guy, which is why going back to what you said about Forsberg had that one really good season in Ottawa and then they kind of gave him that contract. It kind of makes you think you almost want to see a little bit more of a reputation, a little bit more of a resume before you give someone that kind of money and then it still be a problem for them.
Yeah, even those kind of middle of the road deals, those 3-year deals at somewhere in the $2-3 million range. It's the nice thing is it's not crippling, but it's not great. It's not an easy contract. It's still enough money that it's going to be a difficult contract to move if you want to move a struggling player making that.
Yeah, and it adds up too. Like a guy like Travis Hamonic, it's okay to have one of those guys, but if you have
yeah,
but you have 2 or 3 on the back end, you have him or in Vancouver where they got Hamonic from, to have him and Tucker Poolman and I don't know when they had Antoine Roussel, you just can't have those things.
For sure.
Speaking of the goals you scored on Hellebuck today, they're both in the power play, especially that one was a tip, one was that Tim Stützle, just beautiful puck movement. One thing that the Jets have done really well this year is have just such a updated, such a more dynamic power play, and it's good enough for first in the league. Coming to this year, I have a whiteboard over here that gives me the stats. They were at 32.1% for first in the league. Ottawa was big one about 23.7, which is good enough for 8th in the league. So what are some of the kind of things that the Ottawa Senators do to kind of upkeep that power play, especially when they have such a dynamic home and away split on the power play, as they were saying on the broadcast?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough. I don't know. I think I need to look at like the season split on everything, just because the power play, as solid as it is, it still feels kind of streaky, and I don't know if that's just me feeling that way or if that's actually the case. There are certain days where it just like it looks unstoppable. And then there are some days where honestly, like, I think tonight's game was a really good example like that. Um, obviously they scored on the double minor, but the first minute and a half of that double minor was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the first minute and a half on that power play, they just had nothing going. And they can tend to look like that from time to time for stretches, which is annoying when there's so much talent up front on the Sens. But no, like, I shouldn't complain about it, because yeah, like you said, like 8th coming into this game, like that's a great spot to be in. And I don't know, I don't know what it is. I'll just say Alfie. I'll just say Alfred, since Alfredson took over, focusing on the PP. It's definitely been an improvement. Since I guess his first game behind the bench would have been the Sweden games last season. So it's been like just over a year now. Which has been a big help. I'll just say Alfie. When in doubt, I'll just say Daniel Alfredson's the reason something's going well.
Yeah, and then if it goes cold, that's some other guy messing with Alfie's like process.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, that's it's a player's fault if it's cold.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
Yeah.
Just not my favorite player of all time, Claude Giroux. Like, we can't blame him. He got his 400th power play point today. I was a Flyers fan before the Jets came back, and then he's just kind of stuck with me all this time. And I think that, like, one thing I really liked about the Ottawa Senators power play is that one thing that makes the Jets power play click is they have so many different skill sets. And you kind of see that in, like, Velarde, kind of like a Drake Batherson type, like, super good around the net, kind of quick hands. And then you got, like, you got Brady Tkachuk, who's just another, like, net hound. And they got, like, Tim Stützle, who, like, he can move around and do all these, like, crazy move stuff, like kind of like more like a Nick Ehlers type. And then they still have, who's the 5th guy on their power play? It's Josh Norris with the shot, right? And and just all those things kind of come together to create this movement and create some chaos. And at the very least, if things are going bad, you can just fire a shot on net, and you can have those guys in front like Batherson, Tkachuk to kind of clean that stuff up.
Yeah, I think the Sens have still, like, I love both Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot, but I don't think they have, the one thing that they're missing as far as like a comparable to the Jets is that quarterback in Morrissey. I think they're lacking a little bit on that end, just like having someone like, because I don't know, like Chabot was, I think coming in, Chabot was going to be that like really like high octane, high scoring type of defenseman. Like, I think it was his second season. I was already having some injury issues. I think he scored something like 55 points in 70 games, something like that. And we go, oh, okay, so this is going to be the Carlson replacement. All right, he's growing into it. It's just kind of like he's kind of evened out to like a really solid two-way type of player. And I think Sanderson's probably going to be that kind of guy, maxing out at maybe 50-ish points, which is fine. Like, I don't think you need to look for a power play quarterback when you have those two guys on the team, but definitely an aspect of the power play that the Sens are lacking in comparison to the most elite power plays, I guess.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's just even like an east-west skating thing, because like one thing Josh Morrissey does so well is he just walks the blue line with such ease, and when I watch those other two guys, it just doesn't seem like they have quite that elite skill set.
No, if anything, you see Tim Stützle doing that way more than any Sens D on the power play.
Yeah, for sure. And then with that, we have Jay Miller saying, nice comeback, Ryan, for the win. Thank you, Jay. Thanks for commenting and on the show. Yeah, it was such a beautiful. We're talking about that. And while we talk about that comeback, Jay, let's talk about the Jets top line. They kind of really put in the work today. They scored every goal for them. Each one of those players scored a goal, and then Nikolai Ehlers kind of had the one to kind of put the icing on the cake there. And I think with them, kind of like what we were talking about the power play as well, you kind of saw what those three do differently in how they get their offense. Kyle Connor's the guy, he's a little bit of a Phil Kessel type. He's improved his defense a little bit, but he's really got nothing going on there in terms of the defensive prowess that you might get from, like, oh my gosh, who's a good two-way winger? Like Mitch Marner, he's a little bit better at that stuff. Mm-hmm. But with him, it's his shot. It's a shot, and he's so good at becoming invisible. And I think that's what you saw in his goal. And then with a guy like Gabriel Velarde, he is such a good player on the goal line. He's got these magical hands. Put him in a phone booth, he won't lose the puck. And then Mark Scheifele, especially on that pass to talk with my hands, especially with the pass to Kyle Connor. He's so good below the goal line, and it kind of makes this almost perfect symmetry when they're out in the offensive zone to kind of allow for them to. Well, none of them are going to be like a top 30 player in the league. It kind of creates this symmetry that just works. What did you see from the Jets top line in this game?
I mean, to be fair, in a very biased way, I was more focusing on the collapse on the other side of the ice. I don't know what it is. I don't even know. Like you said, like that line was responsible for the vast majority of the offense for the Jets. So, okay, I'll answer by asking you a question. Because up until about halfway through the game, it wasn't necessarily all Ottawa. Like I think it was a fairly even game overall. Like actually, let me just take a quick look here.
Yeah, like I'd say
okay, not what I expected. 5-on-5 scoring chances, 17-16 for the Jets. High danger chances on 5-on-5. So a fairly even game throughout. But it definitely felt like, I mean, obviously 4 unanswered goals. It goes without saying, but the Jets absolutely turned things around. Did you see a full team effort on that, or was it really just like mostly that first line dragging the rest of the team? And is that like, because I don't feel like with how good the Jets are, that's a typical result, like a typical outcome is that, yeah.
Because so much of the time it's that Lowry line. That Lowry line, everyone else in the league needs to know that's the second line. That line starts every game when they can. It ends every period. They really set the tone. And I think with them, it's just kind of whenever the Jets need a reset, when they get scored on, when they score, that line's out there to like reset the pace. And through when things go well, it's usually that line coming on. And it's like, especially there was that shift before the Gabriel Velarde goal, where that line was out there in the zone, and they're kind of putting on the pressure. Come back, there's a change, and then that kind of leaves the Winnipeg Jets to go to that first line and create more offense against a more tired group. And then that led to the power play, which led to the goal, which led to the second goal by Ehlers, and it just becomes a domino effect. And when you don't have a team when you don't have a guy like Nathan McKinnon or like Connor McDavid who can just like turn a game on itself, you kind of need that like more building on shift to kind of create those moments for yourself.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So that top line. Yeah. So the Sens do a decent amount of like line shuffling. So another thing we're going to talk a lot about what I'm jealous of Jets fans with tonight. Is that's more or less been like a set line, I guess, since Velarde was acquired, right? Pretty much, I think, right? It was pretty much from the get-go when Velarde got to Winnipeg that they matched him up with Scheifele and Connor, right?
Yeah, the only really times it kind of moved off of that line was when either Connor or Velarde got hurt, and then they would just throw Nikolai Ehlers on there, and then the line would usually perform better. But like especially when there was a month stretch where Connor was out, and then it was like Connor and Scheifele and Velarde, and during that stretch, like they didn't let more than 3 goals in a game in for the whole month. So nuts.
Wow.
And Nikolai Ehlers was like a top 20 player in 5-on-5 points per 60. And just like,
jeez.
Yeah. So just like, it's really set in stone. In fact, like this season, the Winnipeg Jets haven't changed their lines really one time. It's just like if there's an injury, then that's when they kind of shuffle things around. But they really haven't had any injuries up front either. Like it was Nikolai Ehlers for a bit. And then they were just, they called up some rookies and like we're putting them in. We had Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov. And even then, they would just kind of like, third period comes around, they throw Iafallo up there. But really, when it came down to it, like the Winnipeg Jets have been just dying to not change their lines at all. It's been...
Yeah, the Sens have shuffled things around a lot. I mean, the biggest part of it was definitely during that like biggest losing streak of the season, where for a long time the top line has been Kachuk, Stützle, Giroux, move stuff around, put Kachuk with Batherson and Norris instead, and then like which was fine. Like that was a good line for a little while, and then Stützle found some chemistry with Gaudette for a little bit there. It felt like Stützle was feeding Gaudette for a goal every game for a little while there. But that's another one thing. If I'm going to be really nitpicking some stuff that I wish the Sens had, was very clear set top lines that don't move around. And obviously, like, they didn't move around for a while now. You tend to do a lot less line shuffling when you're on a winning streak, which the Sens are unfortunately have gone from 6 straight wins to are now looking at a potential 3rd loss in a row tomorrow against Minnesota. Things are moving very quickly there in a negative direction. So hopefully nothing too crazy happens. I don't think Travis Green's going to be messing around with the lines too much. I mean, the 2 losses so far in a row, Edmonton and Winnipeg, like,
what are you gonna do?
Tough opponents. Yeah, exactly. What are you gonna do? You're dealing with, the best player in the league and then the best team in the league. It's a tough matchup. So I'm not ready to freak out about that quite yet. But to move it back to that Jets top line, like, I think about that half of one of the second period, I just felt very uneasy every time they were on the ice. Not to say that they weren't playing well in the first half of the game, but just something clicked, right? Something clicked for that top line, and just felt like they were caving the Sens defense in every single shift they were on the ice. I think, were they also on the ice for that? I think it was like Hamnick was stuck on the ice for like a minute 40 straight. Like, it was where a Stapchuk should have cleared the puck, didn't, and just getting hemmed in like crazy. That was awful.
They were either on there like to start it, or they were on there like, oh, that guy's out there for 2 minutes, let's go get him. Like,
yeah.
I think my favorite Travis Hamnick play of the game was on the Velarde goal, when he was trying to direct people around, and then in doing so took his stick out of the lane, and like,
then he looks at Giroux after the goal goes in, like it was his.
Yeah, do not blame Giroux, and 2, I lurk around Sen's Twitter and the Game Over Sen's Discord, our Discord channel, to know what we think about Travis Hamonic at this point. Speaking of the Game Over Discord, guys, we have a Discord, we have a Patreon. We don't have an ad read for these though. So if you want to join us, if you want to be in our chats, if you want to be chatting with us throughout the game, why don't you go down to the description of this very video? It's right by the like button. You should be liking and subscribing while you're there. It's right on the way. You just go there. It's right there. You can do it. It's so free and easy way to support the channel. And how about you join the Discord, come hang out with us. We're always in there. We're always chatting. We're always doing fun stuff. And then if you're like, you know what, I'd really like to support these guys a little further, join our Patreon. We got we got tiers and stuff. I'm as an employee, I'm not really part of the Patreon, but if you want a little bit a month to kind of support the way for the Game Over Winnipeg, the Game Over Network, there's just little ways to do so, and it really just starts with liking and subscribing. And with that, let's get into the second period. In the second period, we are kind of going to go into kind of longer term things that go on with our teams. So kind of season long trends that kind of stem from this game. And one thing I'd like to talk about is the just how the way that the Sens kind of played tonight. And one thing I love about like teams on the come up is you have to learn how to win. And I think a big part of that is you got to learn how to cheat. And with that, you can kind of see like there was a week where the Jets played the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Colorado Avalanche, and someone in between. That doesn't matter. We're not talking about that right now. But you had you played the Tampa Bay Lightning on the Sunday, and you could tell which players knew how to win. You could tell which players were on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we had Vladimir Namestnikov, who was the Tampa Bay Lightning, just punching guys after the whistle, doing little things, taking little shots. And on the game against Colorado, that was on the Thursday that week, same thing. You could tell which players, and it was everyone on the Colorado Avalanche, and it was about half the Jets doing the little things to get under people's skin. And I was just trying to think, is that something that through the recent stretch of Ottawa, have you been noticing that a little bit more in their game?
I don't think that this is a team filled with a ton of depending on how you want to look at it, whether you want to call it sandpaper or like douchebaggery. I think that that's very much a part of, like, I would say, like Kachuk's game. Ridley Gregg is kind of like Kachuk light in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, for the most part, hockey fans outside of Ottawa, when you hear Ridley Gregg, the first thing that comes to mind is that empty net goal against Toronto.
Yeah.
And like, they've got a lot of physical players as well, but nobody that's really. I mean, Nick Cousins, Zach McEwen, whenever he's in the lineup, if he's on the NHL roster, like there are those guys in the organization that tend to play that way. It just feels like, other than Kachuk and Greg, it feels like there's a lack of those types of players who have the elite skill set to go with it. I think that's something that the team is not necessarily that the team is missing, that just because, like, those aren't very common. I guess you could, it's easier to teach somebody to be a little bit more of a jerk than it is to teach them to be an elite player, I suppose. But no, I haven't really noticed any of that in the Sens, as far as like guys that can cheat their way to a win, I guess is the best way to put it. Cut corners or whatever. If anyone's cutting corners, it's usually defensively, and that's a completely different conversation. I don't know. Like, okay, well, we'll flip it on the Jets. Like what's the best example that you could think of when you think of that type of
it's
like type of player?
We talk about the what those lines do. We talk to the third line to the first line. Adam Lowry will always start things. He'll always stick up for things. But in the last like 3 or 4 years, Mark Scheifele has really taken upon himself to not take anyone's SHAIT. I'm not sure on our swearing policy here at the Game Over Network. But he just, when people,
but I haven't been fired yet. It's all a go.
Perfect. Mark Scheifele doesn't take anyone's shit. So yeah, he goes in from the net, especially again when they play Florida. Like those big guys like the Sam Bennett's, the Kachucks, the other Kachuk, the who else they have? They just have a bunch of guys like that on the team. Oliver Ekman-Larsson back in the day, like they go and they hit him. Mark Scheifele's going back and he's just going into the fight. He grabs people. He just does little things, and it's, for me, it's just like learning those skills, because like what you said, it's a little easier to learn that than to learn the other thing. And here in Winnipeg, we're having kind of a Logan Stanley experiment going on 12 years now, or however long he's been around.
Yeah.
And he definitely tries. He definitely tries to throw the body, do the things, but he doesn't have that basic skill set to go along with it, I think is how I'll put it. And I think with those little things, like Nikolai Ehlers fought Ryan Getzlaf one time. Like, it's just, for me, it's not about... for me, it's just not about taking or giving it. It's about not being willing to take it. And I think that's something, when you get into the playoffs and people are trying to throw you off your game, that's just something you really got to learn. And maybe it's about getting into the playoffs first. And that's something that I guess the Senators don't have the recent history of.
No, and there's definitely something to say about those guys who have a reputation of drawing the retaliation penalties.
Yeah.
Like, that's also so nice to have. And unfortunately, I don't know, like Kachuk has never been one to, it's tough now though, like, because I feel like the eye test, someone like Kachuk is taking way fewer minor penalties. It's just his penalty minutes are pretty high by the end of the season, because it feels like he gets a lot of, like, oh, he got like 25 penalty minutes on that play between like a fight and an injection and whatever else. So it doesn't feel like the Sens have anyone who, I don't think there's anyone in the Sens that I'm like, oh, you're taking a bunch of really stupid penalties, but I'd love to see them, like, take that step to kind of get in the mix a little bit more and maybe draw a few more.
Like, there was a game we had where Cole Perfetti got hit from behind against Dallas, and then he goes to the other end of the ice and cross-checks Logan Stankoven into the boards, and he takes the 2-minute penalty. And then he goes to the box. Scott Arniel, when Cole Perfetti gets out of the box, waves him on the ice. He's like, "No, you're good, man. Like, keep playing." And it was just such a nice thing where it's like, oh, that stuff's okay, and that's really good. Another player I want to talk about here is Trevor Clevin. He's a guy that kind of sparked that last question for me because I saw him every time someone's around him, he's giving him an extra shot. He's punching guys. He's just doing the little defenseman thing. He turned over the puck once or twice, but I think that kind of is a give and go. Like for someone
Yeah.
from a from a Winnipeg fan base who is very close to his hometown of Fargo, North Dakota, how would you describe that player's game?
He's weird is the way I'd put it, because he's this big defensive physical guy, and you know, bad example because I'm pretty sure he took a penalty tonight, but he doesn't take many penalties.
Yeah, he took.
Yeah. Let me double check on his page here, because I hope I'm not like making that up and I'm just like ignoring when he's sent to the box. But through 35 games, which I believe includes tonight, 10 penalty minutes for his style of play is surprising to say the least. Like he's I think you summed it up really, really well too. Lots of hits, some turnovers. He's, I don't know, like he's definitely looked at as the number 6 guy on the team. Definitely by, I think, a majority of the fan base, and I'd say Travis Green as well. He probably should be looked at as the number 5 guy. Just when the Sens defense is healthy and Zub is back in the lineup, people were really mad about Hamnick playing on that pairing with Clevin and Jacob Bernard-Docker being taken out.
Yeah.
So, which is also a shame because the Clevin Bernard-Docker pairing has been really, really solid. Yeah, Clevin's a weird one just because he, like, I'm pretty high on him as a permanent NHL player. Like, I think he has a long career ahead of him. He kind of mellows out somewhere in the middle for me. He's got some great defensive plays. I love how physical he is. I love how clean he is most of the time, which is a huge bonus for a depth physical defenseman. But then he has those moments, those really brutal turnovers where I don't know, like it feels like more often than not, I find it's a poor decision that leads to it, which at the very least I think is like a very teachable thing. Whether it's just, he's trying to clear the puck and like, buddy, use the boards, don't go off the middle of the ice, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I'm very high on him as like an everyday bottom pairing guy. I think that's probably where he maxes out, which, like, maybe you want to take someone with a higher ceiling in the second round if you're the Sens back in 2020. Man, I guess he would have been. I guess he was 2020 as well. Yeah, man, that 2020 draft is looking good for Ottawa. But yeah, like, he's a very interesting player. Just with all that in mind, I think if he cleans up the really usually uncontested giveaways in the defensive end, I think he could turn into a very, very solid, play the body first type of defensive defenseman. I don't know how strong his defensive game is going to be going forward. Obviously, like there's all the room for improvement in the world with him still being so young, but like there's just something so fascinating about that, like, physically scary kind of type of player first defenseman who doesn't take many penalties. I think there's a ton of potential there for
like
someone that you
it's
can
like
ideally throw out.
Yeah, and it's like that lack of penalty taking almost shows either a type of intelligence because he's not being caught out of position, or at least he has the skating so he can skate his way out of mistakes. And I was asking about him too because I looked at him like that's what the Jets think, and you can't talk to a Jets fan without talking about Logan Stanley all the time. It's like that's what they think Logan Stanley is, and it just drives me nuts. That's like, oh, that's such a clear improvement on that player.
The Sens are the same thing with like Jared Cowan as an example. Like I just think tall defensemen, they're gonna get like 20 times as many chances as the short skilled guy is gonna get.
Yeah, and like we have a very clear like showing of that with like him and Ville Heinola, and like they get put on a pair together, two lefties, and it's like, why is Ville Heinola not working on the right side? It's like okay, well, he's not we're throwing him to the wolves in his first few games. It's just it's a whole thing. We do this like every game over Winnipeg. We can use our time together in different ways. So going into our third period here, let's talk about how Game Over Winnipeg has you covered after the game. Game Over Ottawa has you covered after the game. But in order to get ready to watch the Jets or the Senators, you have got to get your game on too. Game Over Winnipeg and Ottawa is a short-form daily news podcast covering everything you need to know about the Winnipeg Jets or Ottawa Senators, or we're going to be having shows for the other networks here. And these will be debuting soon. They're coming back. We just had to revamp them. And you can get all your news around for the NHL or for the specific Canadian NHL teams in under 10 minutes, Monday through Friday, with the Game Over Winnipeg /Ottawa / the other teams YouTube channel, and in podcast form, which you can find at thegameovernetwork.com/pages/Winnipeg or Ottawa, or maybe even Toronto if you're out that way. So let's get into the third period. This is where we get to kind of talk about whatever we want to talk about. And I was so happy that I had a Game Over Ottawa host today, because we're in World Junior season. And I think with the World Junior season, we as Canadians, we overanalyze everything that happens with that tournament of teenagers, and we have to critique all the decisions that are made in building the team, every coaching decision, and all of that. And luckily, Dave Cameron was the coach of the World Junior team this year, and he also used to be the coach of the Ottawa Senators from 2014-15, I believe 15 and 16. So I guess my question is, coming off their loss to Latvia, and we have to criticize the coach as Canadians. That's very important for us to do.
Sure.
Do you have any coaching icks from Dave Cameron? Things that you're like, oh, when he does this, I hate it, or he has this bad tendency that I dislike?
A few things. So first of all, there's also a lot more connection with Dave Cameron as well. He's the current 67s coach.
Oh, that's true.
So he's been in Ottawa for quite some time on a few occasions. He was the coach for the Binghamton Senators back in the day as well. So like a lot of connection to the city of Ottawa. So he took over partway through the season. Oh, did he? I think he took over at the beginning of the Hamburglar run. Because he took over partway through a season. His first season, I believe that was 14-15. Mm-hmm. So I believe he took over like during the Hamburglar run. So like as far as like coaching stuff goes, like no one really cared about the coach on that crazy run from being, I think the Suns were 14 points out of the playoffs and then ending up in the playoffs. The following season, he did coach the whole year before they let him go. 15-16. Now was so because he was fired, and then Guy Boucher came in. Sorry, I'm trying to map out the timeline in my head.
Yeah, and that makes sense because Guy Boucher was the coach for the 16-17 run, so that timeline works.
Let me just double check this. Anyway, so there was that then. Oh my God, I'm making all these weird connections in my head now because his assistant coach was Andre Tourigny, who is now the coach for Utah and was the coach for the 67s before Dave Cameron. Wow, there's a lot of connections there. Anyway, sorry. So Dave Cameron. Yeah, Dave Cameron. God, Dave Cameron. Weirdly enough, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Dave Cameron isn't him as coach of the Ottawa Senators. I think back to, I want to say 2010 or 2011, because he also coached Team Canada at the World Juniors one of those years. He was coaching Mississauga in the OHL. He lost the OHL final, the Memorial Cup final, and the gold medal game in the World Juniors all in 1 year. Not to say that doesn't mean he's a good coach, that he's been coaching for a very, very long time. So obviously he's doing something
you got to
right.
get to the final to lose the final,
That's a really big point too. I know everyone was kind of dunking on him for quite a while because of that, but I don't know, like as far as specific icks with him, I have one specific one about him coaching Team Canada right now, and granted we're only 2 games in,
Mhm.
but it sure seems like Oliver Bonk is the QB on the power play when his teammate in London, Sam Dickinson, is the
Yeah.
QB on the London Knights, but not on Team Canada. Like, I don't think that alone is going to make all the difference in the world and turn this team that, like, honestly, on paper is weird. And like, I don't know how much. Okay, actually, well, yeah. Here's the thing. Something I'm completely ignorant. Like, how much sway does the coach have on the construction of the roster? Like, I don't know how much
Not-
he would be involved in that at all. But like, for a team that finished, God, Canada finished like 5th at the World Juniors last year, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Something brutal, and to come back with this team that looks like they were doing their best to make as many third lines as they possibly could. Odd choices across the board. But no, like as far as like Dave Cameron coach isms, like again, that the first run he had with Ottawa in that first season when he came in, I think he replaced Paul McLean.
Yeah,
Um,
that checks out too.
just like this fun run, no one cared about the coaching because the Sens were on an unbelievable run. Then the next season, honestly, like the Sens weren't terrible. His only full season, I think they won 38 games or something like that. But the main thing I remember from that season is it must have been a decent amount of points between the Sens and the playoffs, despite that decent season. Like I think the East must have been good because I remember by about game 70, the main focus was seeing if Erik Karlsson can hit 82 points to make sure he gets a point per game season. So unfortunately, with Dave Cameron's time in Ottawa as a Sens coach, basically the focus was on anything but him
Yeah,
while he was in the city.
that was the emergence of Mark Stone too, because that year in the playoffs they played Montreal, and that's when he
Yes.
broke his wrist. Yeah, so that was another big thing, like coming into that
That was
season,
either, or was that 13? Because they played Montreal twice in 3 years.
That's right. No, because
That might have been
weird story.
13.
I was in Edmonton in 2017 for a grade 11 choir trip, and I watched that game in the West Edmonton Mall Sport Check when he's got slashed on the wrist.
I feel like that was 2013. And then I remember PK Subban being furious that Stone wasn't hurt and was still in the game. And I was like, ooh, that's a tough look to be caught on camera being that mad. Like I understand that, the whole thing is that like he's mad that Stone's still in the game, but he was ejected. Like I get that, but still,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting into a weird Sens rabbit hole thing here. But yeah, like I don't know. Dave Cameron has a long history of being good, but not like winning a ton, I guess. And in Ottawa, like, I mean, he was an assistant coach for a while after he left Ottawa. But I don't know, like, if someone says, "Hey, what's Dave Cameron's coaching style?" I don't know if I can answer that.
Yeah. Which is a bad problem to have. Like I feel like the best coaches can adapt to things, but
Yeah,
like either coaches like Barry Trotz, for example, he's known as the shutdown guy. He's known as this
for
New
sure.
York Islanders shutdown, Nashville shutdown. But when he was with Washington, they scored a ton of goals. They were a little more high flying because he had the guns to do it. And I think that's because he's just a great coach who just adjusts his style to his team. Meanwhile, you have guys like really good coaches. Like I think Guy Boucher is an example of a good coach, and he has a very reserved style.
Guy Boucher, who tells Erik Karlsson, "Hey, you're gonna play the trap."
You're gonna play the trap, and you right. But like he had success. We can't say he didn't have success, but he did it putting square pegs into round holes, and maybe that's something where it's like you need more time with a roster to kind of develop into that stuff. But he at least had a system and a progress or a philosophy that worked. And I think when you have neither of those things, that's when you kind of get into trouble.
Yeah. God, was it Dave Cameron who had the quote, or no, it must have been Guy Boucher afterwards. No, it was Guy Boucher. I was like, I hope it was Dave. I think Guy Boucher had the quote about. No, it was definitely Guy Boucher because of the timeline with Thomas Chabot. But there's a quote about like, you don't feed a baby steak when talking about like giving rookies too much ice time.
Oh yeah.
But no, that was Guy Boucher. That wasn't Dave Cameron. Dave Cameron, very dry, not very many fun quotes out of him, which maybe adds to the whole like sort of beige, whatever the feeling of beige when it comes to Dave Cameron.
Yeah. Oh, to go the you don't give baby steak line goes very well with Paul Maurice's line about not playing Patrick Laine on the top line, which is you don't give a 14-year-old the keys to the car. And
that's good too.
But do you know what you can give a 14-year-old? Look at this Game Over Winnipeg mug. Isn't it beautiful? Everyone in my family got one of these for Christmas. We did a Secret Santa. Guess what was in it? We had a Game Over Winnipeg mug. It was fantastic. And what better way to support something you love than by rocking it as clothing or drinking out of it every show? Game Over's apparel line has dropped with 3 unique designs. Whether you feel the nostalgic pull of our retro skater design, want to make a statement with our established design, or you want to wear your love of goalies proudly with our live and die by the goalie design, or if you just need another coffee to get you through the winter, we have you covered. Look at this QR code. You can go shop. We're going to cover Charlie's face for a second and show you the sweater. The sweater's really nice. I got one of those in black. Let's put the mug on the screen. That's my favorite. We have you covered. Designed by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg. Use the QR code on stream now and take a look through our apparel store and help us build local sports media in Canada while repping your community. Let's get Charlie back. He's back here. And with that, we're going into our overtime period. That is where you, the fans of Game Over Winnipeg, are allowed to, type and Ottawa and, whoever. You don't even need to be a fan. Hey, send us some hate questions. You can ask us about whatever you'd like. It can be about hockey. It can be about ourselves. It can be about season 2 of Arcane, which I'm currently watching. And while we're kind of waiting on your questions, please ask us questions. Let me ask Charlie a question. And my question is, if you could have gotten the Ottawa Senators a Christmas present, what would it have been?
Oh man, like how over the top can we go?
You can go over the top, yeah.
Oh my god. Jeez. What's the let's go with a solid backup goalie feels too lame. Let's go with
we have Santa's workshop, buddy. We can go high.
Yeah. Let's go. God, I don't know. Okay, so Zub has been hurt for the vast majority of the year, and even when he's in the lineup, he doesn't look great. So I'll say, and I'm sad to say this for all the Zub lovers out there, who myself included, that I love Artem Zub. I would say, like, the perfect right shot defenseman to play with Jake Sanderson.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Chabot finally looks like himself again, and I think the main reason for that is bringing Nick Jensen into the fold.
Yeah. Not
that Nick Jensen is the greatest defenseman of all time, but when the two players work together so perfectly, it's like Erik Karlsson turned Marc Methot into, like, the general talk about Marc Methot at the time was this elite stay-at-home, like, perfect piece to go with Erik Karlsson. And it's true, like, there are times when Methot was hurt and Karlsson just didn't look the same.
Yeah.
Nick Jensen, and not to say that Nick Jensen is Marc Methot and Thomas Chabot is Erik Karlsson, it's just an example of, you don't necessarily need the two best defensemen in the world to play well together. So I'm not saying that the Sens need to get a top 10 defenseman to play with Jake Sanderson, just somebody that can eat the minutes with him. And also, as a side thing too, it means that he isn't stuck with Travis Hamonic anymore. So
no, and I think you're kind of going down that road there. I love Nick Jensen. When I did my Game Over Ottawa stream, that was my big takeaway, is how good that player is, because there was a time in that game where they had to go down to 4 defensemen. So good, so great. And
his transition game is unbelievable. I didn't realize he could carry the puck so well.
Yeah, and like I always heard he was an analytic darling, but I didn't realize just how good he was. And I just respect his game. He reminds me of Brett Kulak in
Oh yeah.
just like a depth defenseman who just does it. He just does the things. And with uh with that, I think a perfect guys like Dylan DeMello, Josh Morrissey really
Oh
was
dude,
really unlocked.
don't
And I
talk
want to bring
about
that up
Dylan
today to
DeMello.
rub it in your face a little bit. It's kind of why I asked the question. Um, and then I think if I could give the Jets anything, I'd want to either give them a brand new Dylan Sandberg because Zaris got hurt. We can give him. Actually, no, I'm gonna change this. I want to be able to give Dylan Sandberg Nikolai Ehlers' legs, like another copy, so that he can be really
Okay.
fast. And then while we're at that, we're gonna give Gabriel Velarde also a pair of Nikolai Ehlers' legs because Gabriel Velarde, as good as he is, he can't skate. But if he could, that's the dream.
Man, Nick Jensen is the by far the best player Shabbat has played with since DeMello. DeMello was the perfect player to play with Shabbat's. Now I'm imagining this universe where they still have a Shabbat DeMello pair and a Sanderson Jensen pair instead.
Hey,
Oh my god.
but you have a third round pick. You know, you got a third round pick.
Well, actually, the third round pick for DeMello turned into Marilyn, and who I think is, I have a lot of hope that that's the Sens backup of the future, who's probably playing tomorrow night. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
We'll see. All right, we got one question from my friend Michael Fife. He said, "What did you guys think about Team Canada's World Junior loss to Latvia?" Honestly, I didn't watch the game. I was eating shawarma. I just thought it was going to be a game not worth watching. So I went out. And
As an Ottawa native, that's a very solid reason to not watch a hockey game, is going out to eat shawarma.
yeah, well, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
Yeah.
Charlie, did you watch the game? What'd you think of it?
I caught the last. I caught the second half of the game. I went to two games yesterday.
That's sick.
I went to Slovakia and Switzerland, which was an amazing game. It was a goalie duel until about 3 minutes to go. It was 1-1, and Swiss defenseman with an absolutely brutal turnover
Yeah, I watched
in
this
his own end, and Slovakia took the lead with 3 minutes to go. That was an amazing game. And then I went to Kazakhstan and Sweden, which was not close. That was 8-1 Sweden, I think. So that Kazakhstan Sweden game started at 5, and I got home at about 8:30. So like, I caught about the second half of the Canada game. God, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this, because after last season's tournament, after last year's tournament, and just the general like huge question marks surrounding the roster building of the team this year, I just kind of went into it like, I just kind of want to watch these games and not really care what happens. I'm not necessarily like, if Canada wins, awesome, that's great, but like, I do love the underdog stories like this. I prefer if it was against the States and not Canada, but like, because obviously the US beat Latvia today without a whole lot of trouble. But I just like, well, I mean, first of all, like, the Latvian goalie is like, what a showing.
Yeah.
Like, phenomenal game. Did a little bit better than Sen's prospect in net for Kazakhstan yesterday, who, allowed 8 goals but did stop 44 shots. Yeah, I don't know, like, that Canada team, I didn't watch their first game, but I did catch that Latvia game, so not a whole lot to pull away from. Just like 2 periods of watching this team, but my god, they look rough. Like, the shots were super incandescent. It was something like 50, something like 20, something like that. But like, I think the high danger chances were about even. So I don't know if it's just a matter of them floating around, just kind of like taking a lot of perimeter shots or what. But like, it's not a good look for Canada right now, especially now that Schaefer's out and they're gonna bring in a defenseman who is not Zane Perek or Carter Yakimchuk. God, this roster is weird.
It's weird. I
don't know.
what I said
Are
about
you a
it.
big World Junior guy?
Yeah. Yeah, because it feels like, to me, with this roster, it feels like they were like, okay, we're gonna make this team a team, and then they're like, oh, and then if anything goes wrong, well, then we don't have the flexibility that was a lot of syllables, the flexibility to kind of change it on the fly. And it's just, I don't know, they're kind of stuck with these guys, and they didn't take the not the call ups, but they didn't take the opportunity to like get new guys to kind of like inject some offense or inject some kind of different looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, what, 3 top 9 picks you just left at home between Beckett Seneca, Zane Perek, and Carter Yakimchuk. Michael Misa's not on the team.
No.
Like, what's going on here? Like, this is absolutely wild.
Yeah, and I think they've been like, and I think it's one thing to just take the guys who are, because like the draft can be a little bit like deceiving, right? Like they're looking at guys and they're like,
sure.
okay, you know, yeah. But at the same time, it's like you look at the American team and what they're throwing out there, and it just like at least they took the best 20 guys, and it seems like they do that every year.
Like, I think there's something to be said about building a team with the right pieces and the right chemistry and everything, but like, not when you're taking the best players in the country. Like, when you're taking a roster, when you're trying to build a roster that you have access to all these players, the best players in the world are going to find a way to play with each other. Like, I'm not worried about the chemistry or anything. Like, if someone's like, okay, I'm going to put for like, okay, so like Team Canada at the Four Nation face-off, right? It's like, okay, so like, I really want to put McKinnon with McDavid, but they're both centers. I don't think they're going to play well together. Like, no one's going to be like, oh, these guys can't play well together. Like, they're the best players in the world. They're going to find a way to do it. Like, I think that should be the outlook on the World Juniors. Like, you're trying to put together the best players in the country of this age group against the best players of every other country in that age group. I think you have to worry about fit second. Focus on the skill. If your fourth line is better than some teams' first lines, who cares how well they gel? They're just going to win anyway.
Yeah, and I think like I call it, this is like the who's the guy? Who is that? The Frederick Gauthier. I kept on thinking Cutter. Like Frederick Gauthier, they had him on the team for so many years, and it's like, and ever since then, it seemed like they were looking for the next Frederick Gauthier. Like, we need a face-off specialist. And it's like, why do we like what happens after the face-off? Like, and I think they had Ridley Gregg in those few years there, and he was so good for them in that almost like Adam Lowry role where they keep trying to look for that, and it's just like that seems like it's like a good thing to have, but not a requirement.
Yeah, like, stop making a bunch of third lines and think you're gonna win the gold medal. It's crazy.
Yeah, well said. Anyways, I think we will wrap it up. We're kind of getting to an hour. I try to keep mine a little shorter than that. So we'll kind of wrap things up here on Game Over Winnipeg. Our next stream is Monday. We are the Amazon Prime game against the Nashville Predators. Shout out to the second round series in 2018. That'll be a 6:30 start, 7:30 if you are in the Ottawa region. Ottawa's next game is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central Time, and that is against the Minnesota Wild, where they take on another top team in the league. My name is Brendan Labarre, and this is, let's see if we can do this.
That's my bad.
Yeah, we're gonna throw.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, it's throwing to me. Okay, hey, yeah, sorry. I'm Charlie Arsenault of Game Over Ottawa.
Perfect. All right, and this has been the Game Over Winnipeg, Game Over Ottawa crossout. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I answer the questions in the comments. Please leave them. And thank you for watching. We will see you guys next time.